The morning Ambassador Marcus Chen stepped off the transport shuttle onto Kepler Station was the morning everything changed, though he wouldn't realize it until 3 simple words nearly caused an interstellar incident. The station's artificial. Gravity felt solid beneath his diplomatic boots as he adjusted his formal uniform, the crisp fabric of his Alliance ambassador jacket, catching the gleam of the station's advanced lighting systems. His briefcase contained the standard diplomatic protocols, cultural exchange documents, and enough emergency rations to last a week if negotiations went poorly. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. What it didn't contain was a guide for dealing with the Zephyrian Empire's most enigmatic representative, Ambassador Chen? The voice belonged to Station Commander Sarah Walsh, a veteran officer whose weathered face spoke of decades navigating the complex politics of interstellar diplomacy. Your counterpart arrived 2 hours ago. Fair warning, they've been absolutely silent since disembarking. Marcus nodded, straightening his shoulders. The Zephyrian Empire had only recently opened diplomatic channels with the Human Alliance, and this meeting represented months of careful negotiation just to arrange. The stakes couldn't be higher. Any cultural briefings I should be aware of? He asked, falling into step beside the commander as they walked through the station's pristine corridors. That's just it, Walsh replied, her expression troubled. Our xenobiologists and cultural experts have been studying Zephyrian customs for months, but their society is incredibly complex. What we know comes from intercepted communications and third-party observations. Direct contact protocols are largely theoretical. They passed through several security checkpoints, each one scanning Marcus's diplomatic credentials with practiced efficiency. The deeper they went into the station, the more sophisticated the technology became, until they reached the diplomatic wing, where the walls themselves seemed to pulse with integrated systems. Here's what we do know, Walsh continued as they approached. The meeting chambers. Zephyrians communicate through multiple channels simultaneously: verbal, chemical, electromagnetic, and something our sensors can't quite identify. Their emotional states affect their entire physiology, and they're extremely sensitive to social dynamics. Marcus paused at the entrance to the diplomatic suite. Meaning? Meaning be very, very careful what you say. Their last diplomatic contact with the Altarian Confederation ended when the Altarian ambassador apparently triggered some kind of massive emotional response just by commenting on the weather. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The doors to the diplomatic suite slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a chamber designed to accommodate multiple species' needs. The lighting could shift across various spectrums, the atmosphere could be adjusted for different breathing requirements, and the furniture could adapt to any number of physiological configurations. At the center of the room, motionless as a statue, stood the Zephyrian ambassador. Marcus had seen holographic recordings of Zephyrians before, but nothing had prepared him for the reality. The being stood roughly human height, but possessed an ethereal quality that seemed to bend light around them. Their skin shifted through subtle color variations like living opal, and gossamer thin appendages that might have been hair or sensory organs floated around their head in an invisible current. What struck Marcus most was their absolute stillness. The Zephyrian hadn't moved since the doors opened, their large, multifaceted eyes fixed on some point in the middle distance. Their breathing was so subtle it was nearly imperceptible. "Ambassador," Walsh announced formally. "May I present Ambassador Marcus Chen of the Human Alliance." "Ambassador Chen, this is..." She paused, consulting her tablet. Harmonious resonance of evening stars across silent waters. Principal diplomatic voice of the Zephyrian Empire. The Zephyrian's eyes shifted to focus on Marcus, and he felt a strange tingling sensation across his skin. Up close, He could see that their entire body seemed to vibrate at a frequency just below human perception, creating an almost hypnotic effect. Marcus stepped forward, offering the formal diplomatic bow he'd practiced for weeks. "It is an honor to meet you, harmonious resonance of evening stars across silent waters." The Zephyrians' color shifted slightly, cycling through deeper hues, but they made no verbal response. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Commander Walsh cleared her throat. "I'll leave you both to your negotiations. The chamber is equipped with universal translators and recording equipment for the official record. If you need anything, just contact station operations." As the doors sealed behind her, Marcus found himself alone with the most alien being he'd ever encountered. The Zephyrian continued their silent observation, and Marcus began to feel the weight of expectation. This meeting could determine the future of human-Zephyrian relations for generations. He moved to the conference table, a sleek surface that adjusted itself automatically to accommodate both species' needs. The Zephyrian followed, their movements fluid and precisely controlled, like a dancer performing choreography only they could hear. "I've prepared extensive documentation regarding our proposed trade agreements," Marcus began, opening his briefcase and arranging papers across the table's surface. "Our economic analysis suggests significant mutual benefits from resource sharing and technology exchange." The Zephyrians settled into their chair, or rather, the chair reshaped itself around them, creating something that looked more like a living sculpture than furniture. They studied the documents Marcus had spread out, but their eyes seemed to focus on points between the words rather than the text itself. Minutes passed in silence. Marcus had been trained in patience, but the absolute lack of response was beginning to unnerve him. The Zephyrians' colors continued to shift in subtle patterns, cycling through what looked like deep contemplation mixed with something he couldn't identify. "Perhaps," Marcus tried again, "we could begin with cultural exchange. Our peoples have much to learn from each other." This time, the Zephyrians' appendages moved slightly, creating a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. When they spoke, their voice carried harmonic overtones that seemed to resonate through the chamber itself. "Exchange requires understanding. Understanding requires." They paused, their colors shifting to what might have been confusion. Verification of intent and emotional resonance. Marcus nodded eagerly. This was progress, absolutely. Mutual understanding is the foundation of all successful diplomacy. "I'm here to ensure that both our peoples can." "You speak of peoples," the Zephyrian interrupted, their colors darkening. "But you have not established your own harmonic identity. How can one negotiate for others when one has not defined oneself?" The question caught Marcus off guard. His diplomatic training had covered negotiation tactics, cultural sensitivity, and protocol management, but nothing quite like this. "I'm not sure I understand." "I am Ambassador Marcus Chen, duly appointed representative of the Human Alliance." Titles: "Our Surface Resonance," the Zephyrian replied, their voice taking on additional harmonics that made Marcus's teeth ache slightly. "I ask for your core harmonic state, your emotional truth, your current experiential reality." Marcus stared at them, trying to process what was being asked. The universal translator was working perfectly, but the concepts being conveyed seemed to exist outside normal diplomatic discourse. "You're asking about my personal state?" he ventured. The Zephyrian's colors brightened suddenly, cycling through what looked like relief mixed with anticipation. "Yes, personal harmonic resonance is the foundation of all Zephyrian interaction. One cannot engage in meaningful communication without first establishing emotional baseline and intent purity." Marcus felt a moment of panic. This wasn't covered in any of his briefings. He'd been prepared for complex negotiations, not personal emotional assessments. But the Zephyrian was clearly waiting for some kind of response, their colors now pulsing with what seemed like eager expectation. He thought about his morning, his journey to the station, his hopes for the negotiations. He thought about his nervousness, his determination to succeed, his genuine curiosity about Zephyrian culture. Finally, he decided on honesty. "Well," he said, settling back in his chair, "if you want to know how I am personally ... I'm doing pretty well, actually. A bit nervous about this meeting, excited about the possibilities, and honestly fascinated to learn more about your people." The effect was immediate and startling. The Zephyrians' colors exploded into brilliant patterns, cycling through every hue Marcus had ever seen, and several he was pretty sure shouldn't exist. Their appendages began moving in complex patterns, creating harmonics that filled the chamber with sound like a celestial orchestra tuning up. "Magnificent!" the Zephyrian exclaimed, their voice now carrying so many overtones it seemed to come from multiple directions at once. Such clarity of emotional expression, such pure harmonic resonance. "You have achieved perfect transparency of intent." Marcus blinked, completely confused by the reaction. "I thank you?" But the Zephyrian was no longer sitting still. They had risen from their chair and were moving around the chamber in flowing patterns, their colors continuing to shift through increasingly complex displays. Their voice rose and fell in what sounded like singing, though the melody was unlike anything in human music. "Wait," Marcus said, standing up as well. "I think there might be some misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," the Zephyrian interrupted, their joy apparently unbounded. "You have performed the ritual of harmonic transparency with perfect emotional purity. Not even our most skilled diplomats achieve such clarity on first attempt." "Ritual? What ritual?" Marcus felt his confusion growing. "I just answered your question about how I was feeling." The Zephyrians stopped their movement abruptly, their colors shifting to what Marcus was beginning to recognize as intense concentration. You performed the sacred inquiry response without preparation, without formal training in harmonic resonance patterns?" "I have no idea what you're talking about," Marcus admitted. "You asked how I was, and I told you." The chamber fell silent except for the soft hum of the station systems. The Zephyrians' colors began cycling through what looked like shock, wonder, and something that might have been awe. You responded to the sacred inquiry with natural harmonic truth. They whispered, their voice barely audible. This is ... this is unprecedented." Marcus was beginning to realize that something significant had happened, though he still had no idea what. "Is that ... good?" The Zephyrians' response was to rush toward the chamber's communication panel, their movements now urgent rather than flowing. Their colors had shifted to patterns that pulsed with what looked like extreme excitement, mixed with panic. "I must contact the Harmonic Council immediately," they announced, their appendages moving in rapid patterns over the alien interface. "They must know what has occurred." "Wait," Marcus called out, moving toward them. "What exactly has occurred?" "What did I do?" But the Zephyrian was already speaking rapidly in their own language, the harmonics so complex that the universal translator was struggling to keep up. Marcus caught fragments, something about natural harmonic clarity, untrained emotional transparency, and unprecedented diplomatic development. The chamber's main display activated, showing the seal of the Zephyrian Empire as communication. Channels opened across interstellar space. Marcus watched with growing alarm as what appeared to be emergency protocols engaged, sending priority messages through the galaxy's fastest communication networks. "Harmonious resonance of evening stars," Marcus said, using the ambassador's full name in an attempt to get their attention. "Please help me understand what's happening." The Zephyrian turned toward him, their colors now cycling through patterns so rapid and complex they were difficult to follow. "You have done something that our xenobiologists believed impossible. You have achieved perfect harmonic transparency with zero cultural preparation. By answering the simple question about how I was feeling, the sacred inquiry is not simple," the Zephyrian exclaimed, their voice rising to harmonics that made the chamber's walls vibrate. It is the most complex social ritual in Zephyrian culture. It requires years of training to perform correctly. Most diplomats require decades of study before they can even attempt a proper response. Marcus felt a sinking sensation in his stomach. And I just did it. Accidentally? Not just performed it, the Zephyrian continued, their excitement palpable. You achieved what our greatest philosophers call the impossible resonance, complete emotional honesty combined with perfect harmonic clarity. It is considered the highest achievement of diplomatic art. The communication display began showing. Incoming priority messages from across Zephyrian space. Military frequencies, diplomatic channels, even what looked like civilian news networks were lighting up with activity. This is being broadcast across your entire empire. Marcus asked, his diplomatic training finally kicking in as he realized the potential implications. The Harmonic Council is convening an emergency session. The Zephyrian confirmed, their colors now pulsing with patterns that suggested barely controlled chaos. The high resonance chamber is being alerted. Even the deep harmony monasteries are being notified. Marcus watched as the cascade of communications spread across the display, showing Zephyrian space lighting up with activity. Ships were changing course, facilities were being placed on alert, and what looked like their entire governmental structure was mobilizing in response to his simple, honest answer to a question about his well-being. I think, Marcus said slowly, we need to call Commander Walsh. The Zephyrian ambassador's colors suddenly shifted to deep, pulsing red. No, the harmonic resonance must not be interrupted. You have achieved something sacred. To break the connection now would be catastrophic. Catastrophic how? Before the Zephyrian could answer, the chamber's communication system activated with the distinctive chime of an incoming priority message. Commander Walsh's voice filled the space, tight with controlled urgency. Ambassador Chen, we're detecting massive activity across Zephyrian space. Multiple fleets are changing course toward the border sectors, and their diplomatic networks are sending priority broadcasts. Please advise your status immediately. Marcus looked at the Zephyrian ambassador, whose colors were now cycling through what he was beginning to recognize as intense anxiety. Their appendages were moving in rapid, agitated patterns, and the harmonics they were producing created an almost musical backdrop to the growing crisis. Commander, Marcus replied, keying the communication panel, I believe we may have a situation. It appears I've accidentally triggered some kind of significant cultural response. Define significant, Ambassador. Marcus looked at the displays, showing the ever-expanding network of Zephyrian communications, the mobilizing fleets, the emergency governmental sessions. He thought about his simple answer to a simple question, and how it had somehow become the catalyst for what looked like empire-wide mobilization. I asked the Zephyrian ambassador how they were doing, he said finally. Apparently that was a mistake. The silence that followed was broken only by the continued harmonics from the Zephyrian ambassador, whose colors had now shifted to patterns that seemed to pulse with the rhythm of their increasingly rapid breathing. Ambassador Chen, Walsh's voice came back, carefully controlled. I need you to explain exactly what happened, step by step. As Marcus began to recount the events of the morning, he watched the Zephyrian ambassador continue their increasingly frantic communications with their home world. The displays showed more and more activity fleets, governments, entire populations apparently mobilizing in response to something he still didn't fully understand. He had come to this meeting hoping to establish simple trade relations between two species. Instead, he had apparently triggered the most significant diplomatic event in Zephyrian history by being polite and honest about his feelings. The irony was not lost on him, even as he watched the galaxy's newest diplomatic crisis unfold in real time around him. And then, he continued his explanation to Commander Walsh. They said I had performed something called the Sacred Inquiry Response with perfect harmonic transparency. That's when things got complicated. The Zephyrian Ambassador had now moved to what appeared to be a secondary communication system, their colors cycling through patterns so intense they were beginning to make Marcus's eyes water. The harmonics they were producing had become complex enough that the chamber's acoustic systems were struggling to process them through the growing chaos. Marcus began to realize that his simple diplomatic mission had become something far more significant and potentially dangerous than anyone had anticipated. The morning he had stepped onto Kepler Station to conduct routine diplomatic negotiations had become the morning he accidentally triggered what looked like it might be the most important or disastrous moment in human-alien relations since first contact. And it all started because he had politely asked someone how they were doing. As alarms began sounding throughout the station, and Commander Walsh's increasingly urgent communications filled the chamber, Marcus couldn't help but think that his diplomatic training definitely hadn't prepared him for this. The emergency session in Kepler Station's main conference room buzzed with tension as representatives from 3 different species tried to make sense of the unfolding crisis. Admiral Hayes paced behind a holographic display showing Zephyrian fleet movements, while Commander Walsh coordinated with Alliance High Command. At the center of it all, Marcus sat across from harmonious resonance of evening stars, who had somehow managed to become even more luminous in their agitation. "Let me get this straight," Admiral Hayes said, stopping his pacing to fix Marcus with a stern look. "You accidentally performed their most sacred ritual by being polite?" "Apparently," Marcus replied, feeling the weight of galactic diplomacy pressing down on his shoulders. "Though I still don't fully understand what makes it so significant." The Zephyrian Ambassador's colors shifted to what Marcus was learning to recognize as patient explanation mode, deeper blues mixed with slow-pulsing golds. The sacred inquiry and its response form the foundation of all meaningful communication. In our culture, it requires complete emotional vulnerability, perfect harmonic resonance, and absolute truth. Most of our own diplomats spend lifetimes learning to achieve even basic competency. Commander Walsh looked up from her communication panel, and Ambassador Chen just did it naturally. With unprecedented purity, harmonious resonance confirmed, their appendages creating soft, admiring harmonics. His emotional state was completely transparent. Nervousness, excitement, curiosity, determination, all presented in perfect harmonic balance. It was like watching the master painter create their greatest work on the first attempt, except the painting was his soul. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "That's flattering, I think. But why is your entire empire mobilizing over it?" The Zephyrians' colors darkened with what might have been embarrassment. "Because we may have overreacted slightly to the implications." Admiral Hayes stopped pacing entirely. "Define slightly, Ambassador." The main display suddenly filled with an incoming transmission from Zephyrian space. The signal was so complex that the station systems took several seconds to process it, finally resolving into the image of what could only be described as the most magnificent being Marcus had ever seen. The figure on screen possessed the same basic Zephyrian physiology as harmonious resonance, but amplified to an almost godlike degree. Their skin shifted through colors that seemed to exist beyond normal spectrums, and their appendages moved in patterns so complex they created visible interference effects in the transmission itself. "Great resonance supreme, harmonious resonance," said, their own colors immediately shifting to deep, respectful purples as they performed what looked like an elaborate bow. "I am honored by your direct communication." The being on screen spoke in harmonics so complex that the universal translator struggled for several seconds before managing a rough approximation. "Small voice who speaks for the distant harmony. You have reported the occurrence of the impossible resonance. We require immediate verification of this claim." Marcus leaned toward Commander Walsh. "Should I be worried that their supreme leader is personally involved in this?" Terrified might be more appropriate, she whispered back. The great resonance. Supreme's attention shifted to Marcus, and he felt an almost physical pressure as those alien eyes focused on him. When they spoke again, the harmonics were so intense that the conference room's walls began to vibrate. Human Marcus Chen, who achieves impossible resonance. You will demonstrate the sacred response for our direct observation. Marcus looked around. The room at the expectant faces, human, alien, and artificial intelligence alike. I'm not sure I know how to repeat what I did. I was just being honest about how I felt. Harmonious Resonance's colors brightened with excitement. Yes, that is exactly the point. You achieved perfect sacred response through natural harmonic truth rather than trained technique. It suggests possibilities we never considered. Admiral Hayes cleared his throat. With respect to your supreme resonance, we're concerned about the military mobilization occurring throughout your space. Multiple fleets are moving toward our borders. The Great Resonance Supreme's colors shifted to what Marcus was beginning to recognize as mild amusement. The fleets move not in preparation for war, Admiral Hayes, who coordinates defense. They move in anticipation of pilgrimage. Pilgrimage? Commander Walsh asked. If human Marcus Chen can indeed achieve impossible resonance naturally, he represents the fulfillment of our oldest prophecy, the coming of the bridge speaker, who would unite all harmonies into perfect understanding. Millions of our people wish to witness this miracle. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Millions? Perhaps billions. The Great Resonance Supreme continued serenely. The Deep Harmony monasteries alone contain 17 million monks who have dedicated their lives to achieving what you accomplished in casual conversation. The conference room fell silent, except for the soft hum of the station's systems. Marcus looked around at the faces surrounding him, seeing his own growing panic reflected in their expressions. This is getting out of hand, Admiral Hayes said. Finally, we need to find a way to de-escalate this situation before it becomes an interstellar incident. De-escalate? Harmonious Resonance's colors flashed with what looked like horror. You cannot de-escalate a miracle. If Marcus truly possesses natural harmonic resonance, he could revolutionize communication between all species. Marcus held up his hands. Wait, everyone just slow down for a minute. Great Resonance Supreme, what exactly would this pilgrimage involve? The massive being on screen considered the question, their colors cycling through deep contemplation. The convergence of harmonies would require your presence at our capital world. There, our greatest resonance masters would study your natural abilities while billions of our people experience the miracle of perfect communication. And if I refuse? The Great Resonance Supreme's colors shifted to patterns Marcus couldn't interpret, but Harmonious Resonance translated with obvious discomfort. Refusing would be inadvisable, not because of any threat, but because the disappointment might cause harmonic dissonance throughout our entire civilization. Commander Walsh stepped forward. Are you saying that Ambassador Chen's refusal could destabilize your entire society? Potentially, the Great Resonance Supreme admitted. We are a people built on the pursuit of perfect communication. To be presented with natural harmonic resonance and then denied access to it, the psychological impact could be catastrophic. Marcus ran his hands through his hair, feeling the weight of an entire civilization's expectations settling on his shoulders. So I have to choose between becoming some kind of alien messiah or potentially causing the psychological collapse of your entire species. When you put it that way, Admiral Hayes muttered, it doesn't sound like much of a choice. But Marcus was thinking, his diplomatic training finally kicking in as he began to see possibilities beyond the apparent dilemma. Great Resonance Supreme, what if there was another way? What if the miracle wasn't just about me, but about what my natural response suggests about human Zephyrian communication in general? The massive being's colors shifted to intense curiosity. Explain, bridge speaker. You said I achieved perfect harmonic resonance naturally, without training. What if that's not unique to me? What if humans in general have a natural compatibility with Zephyrian communication patterns that we've never explored? Harmonious Resonance's colors exploded into brilliant patterns of excitement. The concept of species-wide harmonic compatibility. If humans naturally possess resonance abilities, then instead of one bridge speaker, Marcus continued, warming to the idea, you could have an entire bridge species. Humans and Zephyrians working together, learning from each other, developing new forms of communication that benefit everyone. The Great Resonance Supreme was quiet for long moments, their colors cycling through patterns too complex for Marcus to follow. Finally, they spoke, their harmonics carrying what sounded like wonder. You propose to transform the miracle of individual achievement into the miracle of species-wide cooperation. Exactly, Marcus said, feeling confidence building. Instead of pilgrimage to witness one person's abilities, we could establish exchange programs, joint research initiatives, cultural immersion experiences. Every human who learns to communicate with natural harmonic resonance becomes a bridge between our peoples. Admiral Hayes looked intrigued. It would certainly be more manageable than billions of pilgrims converging on one location. Commander Walsh was already running calculations on her tablet. The diplomatic implications alone. We could be looking at the most significant interstellar cooperation in galactic history. But it was Harmonious Resonance whose reaction convinced Marcus they were on the right track. The Zephyrian Ambassador's colors had shifted to patterns of pure joy, their appendages creating harmonics so beautiful, they seemed to make the air itself sing. The great harmony, they whispered. Not just perfect communication between individuals, but perfect understanding between entire civilizations. The Great Resonance Supreme's image flickered as they processed the implications. When they spoke again, their voice carried new harmonics that made Marcus's chest resonate with sympathetic vibrations. Human Marcus Chen, who speaks of great harmony. Your proposal transforms crisis into opportunity, individual miracle into species-wide evolution. We accept your vision. Marcus felt a wave of relief wash over him, followed immediately by excitement as he realized what they had just set in motion. So instead of me becoming some kind of alien messiah, we work together to explore the natural communication abilities that both our species might possess. More than that, the Great Resonance Supreme replied, their colors now cycling through patterns that somehow conveyed vast satisfaction. We established the first true interspecies harmony, not just translation between different forms of communication, but genuine understanding at the deepest levels of consciousness. Admiral Hayes looked around the room. I have to say, when I woke up this morning, I never expected to be present at the founding of a new form of galactic diplomacy. The beauty of it, Marcus said, grinning as the full implications hit him, is that it all started with the simplest possible human interaction. I just asked someone how they were doing and answered honestly when they asked me the same thing. Harmonious Resonance's colors shifted to what Marcus now recognized as deep contentment mixed with anticipation. Perhaps that is the true miracle, that the most profound connections can emerge from the simplest genuine interactions. Commander Walsh was coordinating with Alliance High Command, her voice carrying new energy as she outlined the proposed cooperation initiatives. Across Zephyrian space, the mobilized fleets were already beginning to reorganize from pilgrimage formations into scientific and cultural exchange groups. The Great Resonance Supreme's final transmission carried harmonics that seemed to reach directly into Marcus's soul. Bridge speaker Marcus Chen, you have given us something more valuable than individual miracle. You have given us hope for true understanding between all conscious beings. The great harmony begins now. As the transmission ended, Marcus looked around the conference room at the faces of beings who had just witnessed the birth of something unprecedented in galactic history. Through a simple act of politeness and honesty, he had accidentally triggered a crisis that had transformed into the most significant diplomatic breakthrough in recorded history. "So," Admiral Hayes said, breaking the contemplative silence, "I suppose the next question is, how exactly do we explain this to Alliance High Command?" Marcus laughed, feeling lighter than he had since the crisis began. "I think we just tell them the truth, that the future of interstellar relations was revolutionized because someone asked me how I was doing, and I gave an honest answer." Harmonious Resonance's colors shifted to what Marcus was learning to recognize as amusement mixed with profound satisfaction. And perhaps that is the most human thing of all, to transform the universe through simple, genuine connection. As Kepler Station began coordinating the most ambitious interspecies cooperation project in galactic history, Marcus couldn't help but smile at the absurdity of it all. He had come here to negotiate trade agreements and ended up accidentally founding a new era of interstellar understanding, all because he had been polite enough to ask someone how they were doing, and honest enough to tell the truth when they asked him the same question. The crisis that had begun with a simple "How are you?" had become the foundation for the most profound diplomatic revolution in the history of conscious species. And somehow, Marcus thought as he watched Harmonious Resonance coordinate with their people to begin the Great Harmony Project, that seemed perfectly appropriate. That after all, the best connections, whether between individuals or entire civilizations, had always started with simple, genuine interest in how someone else was doing. The galaxy, it seemed, was about to become a much more connected place. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.